people would apply on job boards, thousands of people a week, and the owner of the six care homes would download the CVs if he thought they looked good. His words. It's really interesting for us to do audits for big companies, um, and let them know, look, unfortunately, you're actually doing recruitment wrong, in our opinion. We're only going to ask carers who will say, look, I applied for 10 roles and not one person got back to me, or one might have done 2 weeks later. We need to be careful as an industry that we are not putting people off applying for care roles. So a lot of companies will complain about no-shows. When you introduce reminders, email reminders, bit of automation, you will see your numbers skyrocket.
Welcome to the Health Automated podcast, where we discuss what's going on in the world of social care. I'm one of the co-presenters, Mark Tops, and I'm joined here today by my other co-presenter, Jack. And today we're discussing recruitment and retention. Jack, how are you?
I'm all right, Mark. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad, thank you. Not too bad. Tired after UK Care Week, but otherwise, yeah, can't complain.
Yeah, it was a success. The Care and Few Theatre was rammed. So I was there on day 2 for those that are listening in and didn't manage to attend. Some very good topics, a lot of excellent feedback. So obviously make sure you give the Care and View a good follow online, always talking about them relevant topics. It was nice. We had a good conversation, didn't we, with Michelle Corrigan?
It was a good conversation. I think one that could have probably have gone far beyond the 45 minutes of allocated time, but
I agree. We had some good engagement from the audience as well. They was asking a lot of relevant questions, which is nice. So it shows that the message is getting out there and people are taking AI and legislation seriously. So it's nice.
No, absolutely.
But enough about our ramblings. Let's introduce Stephen.
Yes. So, hello, Stephen.
How are we? Are you well?
Yeah, not too bad, thank you. For anybody listening, watching, are you able to do a quick introduction into who you are, what you do?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, thanks so much for having me. So I'm Stephen Forster. I'm the founder and director of the Care Social Network. So a bit about me, my background, I started as a care assistant 8 years ago in domiciliary care. I then became a support worker for mental health and challenging behaviour. And then I worked my way up the ladder. I became a HR manager for a dom care company. We went from about 35 staff to 70 staff in 12 months, doubled the size of the company. We did very, very well. And then I realised I was quite good at recruitment and retention. I realised that because the registered managers were saying, look, we never used to hire staff. Now we're hiring 5 or 6 per month and we're not losing staff. So I was like, that's really lovely feedback. So yeah, 4 years of doing a HR manager role, I then started my own company, the Care Social Network. So we work with supported living, care homes, residential nursing, dom care, any care company you could think of. And we basically fix processes, so bottlenecks in regards to phone screens, face-to-face interviews, offer management, time to hire, and everything you can think of in regards to recruitment. We manage companies' job board pages. And on some instances as well, we arrange face-to-face interviews for companies who are struggling. So that might be in an interim period, it might be for a long-term project as well. We help companies remove agency spend if they'd like to remove agency spend. Continuity of care is obviously a big factor. Last year, 1.8 million was saved for care providers. This year, it's going to be probably about 2.5 million. We're massive on continuity of care. We're massive on quality of care. There's only 3 of us in the team, but yeah, it's no doubt going to grow because there's a massive demand for what we do. But yeah, that's us in a nutshell. I hope that gives a bit of a picture.
Oh, that's awesome. It sounds like you made a major impact there as well to the sector, which is great, especially with helping companies reducing the agency spend. Everyone make sure he gives Stephen follow, obviously, especially for recruitment, if he can help you out. But yeah.
Yeah, you know what? It was one of those, it sort of happened a little bit by accident where care companies realised what we were doing in our dom care company. And all I've done really is taken my practical knowledge of being a carer and then being a HR manager, combined the two, and with respect to anybody listening, it's a lot of common sense, in all honesty, and a lot of consistency. So we've got a specific blueprint which people can download. But one of the biggest offers we have is auditing care companies on their recruitment processes. So I'll give you an example. We did an audit last month for 6 care homes in the north. And the way they did recruitment was, and this is not their fault, by the way, it's just they've never been taught and they've never heard of us. So there's nobody to show them how to do recruitment properly. People would apply on job boards, thousands of people a week. And the owner of the 6 care homes would download the CVs if he thought they looked good. His words, if they looked good, we'll come back to that if you want. Then he would email them out to each individual care home. The administrator at each care home would look at the CV and then decide if they thought these CVs, not people, these CVs were good to work at this care home. Then they would pass them to the registered manager, and then the registered manager would come back to the admin and say, yeah, book A, B, and C in. We did the audit, and that from the person applying to a candidate getting a phone call was roughly 7 to 9 days. So, yeah, that's painful for us to hear, but it's not their fault. I want to make that very clear. They thought that's how everybody did recruitment. We changed that. We've now got that down in only the last 4 weeks to it was 3 days for the first week, but it's now down to 24 hours. So somebody applies, they're getting a phone call within 24 hours, and then they're given a lot more availability. So the registered managers are giving set availability for interviews. Long story short, they've already arranged like 40 odd interviews at the 6 care homes. They were averaging 25 interviews a month in total, and they've already smashed that out of the park, and they've hired a hell of a lot more people. So it's really interesting for us to do audits for big companies. And let them know, look, unfortunately, you're actually doing recruitment wrong, in our opinion. And it's probably not uncommon that a lot of care companies like us. I mean, you guys may have experienced it yourself, Mark. I know you and I discussed recruitment before, and you've never had really any challenges. But does this all ring true to you guys? Have you heard this anecdotally before yourselves, or?
Yeah, I mean, in my previous life as a care provider, recruitment and retention was one of them things. I mean, I'm based in Norfolk, so it's very rural, very small town based, and you can burn through a talent pool very, very quickly if you're not a good employer, and having effective processes. So, we from what I remember, because I wasn't always involved in the direct hires. But from what I would remember, that people would apply, and then we had a policy internally that we'd try and get back to that person at least the same day, even if it's over a weekend. On call would say thank you for the interest and try and book them in, because what we found is when people are in a job search frenzy, as we used to say, they'd apply for a lot of jobs with a similar sort of role, and realistically, the first ones to buy it and go back to them stand the greatest chance. But I know now what we did then might not necessarily transfer to today. We're going back 6-8 years, and that's not a major time frame, but life has changed. We've had a pandemic since then. Everything's become more consumer based, so people expect things now, and I was having this sort of discussion with one of my family members, and it was basically years ago you'd happily wait like 3 to 5 days for a parcel because that was the norm. Now if it can't get next day, you'd happily pay more to go to somewhere like Amazon to make sure you do, even though you don't necessarily need it.
Of course you would, but this is the world we live in, isn't it? And I think that's now transpired to every element of our lives. I see people getting peed off in queuing for a coffee. They've been waiting 30 seconds. It's like, give me that coffee now. I'm like, you need to chill out. Like, come on, like not everything's today. Do you know what I mean? Like, and I think it's just the world we live in. Everything wants to be done yesterday. But I mean, on the subject of automation, one of the services we do, which isn't automated, but we need to definitely get to this level. So when people apply we manage companies' Indeed pages, and we do very, very well with Indeed. When people apply, we check their screener questions against the questions that we've asked, e.g., are you a driver? Can you work alternate weekends? Do you require sponsorship? How many hours can you work? Whatever it may be, because you can ask these questions on Indeed. We then review these questions, and then we have templates within Indeed which send out messages if the person meets the criteria. So we're, on behalf of the company, we're messaging candidates manually. We're doing this, we have templates. Thank you for your application. Somebody will be in touch. We just need to ask a few more questions. We weren't too sure if you can work alternate weekends. So what this is doing, it's actually speeding up the time to hire process, we call it. And it's also keeping what we call the candidate journey a pleasant, warm experience. There's too many carers out there. You've only got to ask carers who will say, look, I applied for 10 roles and not one person got back to me, or one might have done 2 weeks later. We need to be careful as an industry that we are not putting people off applying for care roles, because if we're not treating carers unbelievably well, and by the way, I mean, even if they're not suitable, so if somebody doesn't meet the criteria, we will send them a message. Look, unfortunately, you've not met the criteria because this is a role which requires a car. Please stay in touch. And we'll even say, look, because you haven't got a car, we would recommend care homes within the area. Click this link to look at the care homes within 5 miles of this. So we're actually encouraging people to apply and stay within the industry. I don't want people leaving the care industry. I don't want them going to work at supermarkets or wherever else they decide to work. We need to keep people within the industry. But one thing we need to do, and this is something we could probably brainstorm now, we need to get better at automation. You can do it on Indeed, but you almost need maybe an ATS, which goes one step further and maybe even sends a text out to candidates automatically. Look, thank you for your application. We do that now manually, so it takes hours. So we're literally copying numbers, saying hi, thanks. So you can imagine. I mean, this is like 1999 stuff, isn't it? But it works very, very well because we've noticed as well. As soon as you text people thanking them for application, and when you text people inviting them in for an interview and a reminder of that interview, our interview show rate went up 57%. So a lot of companies will complain about no-shows. When you introduce reminders, email reminders, bit of automation, you will see your numbers skyrocket.
Yes, no, it's the tech is the way going forward. I mean, I'm not sure if you're aware, a couple of years ago, I founded an app called Social Job Finder, and it was
I didn't
designed
know
for
that. Right.
Ah,
Very good.
yeah. We took it off the market because it's part of architecture, which is Health Automated's line. Well, now, but at the time it wasn't. It was one of the first parts that started the journey. But picture Tinder for job finding, but less seedy. So during the pandemic, we sort of thought like, oh well, what can we do? So it's just before that we had the idea, but the pandemic sort of spurred it on, as you can imagine. And the way it would work would be like using location services with all of that sort of stuff. So someone had set up their profile, I'm looking for a job within this radius. And then any of the care providers that were connected could manage all their vacancies. The person could swipe left and right for the roles, see all of it, see videos, and do all of the recruitment process through the app. And then even if they hire. And it was pretty cool and it worked really well. But when we started focusing on architecture, it wasn't overly compatible because architecture grew. So we took it off the shelf and we are relaunching it later this year. But it was a way of enhancing that communication and people seem to love it. But it just didn't get traction because it was a new app. It was, it was people was like, oh, is it another app? And that's the thing you fall into that you've probably heard before as well. But then another job board, is it Reed, is it Indeed? There's tools out there, and sometimes you've got to sift through and use many tools to try and achieve your outcome. But I'm all for automation.
And did that just need is that something like you mentioned there, will you come back to? Because I know there is a space in the market for this, because we've literally got hundreds of testimonials and case studies that prove this works, as in like the data doesn't. I'm a bit of a data geek, so you can literally see, look, last month before using us, you had a 75% no-show rate to your interviews. Then you introduced our processes. Okay, all of a sudden 82% of people are showing now. Like, it's no coincidence. As soon as you make the recruitment process smooth and enjoyable for candidates, they want to show for an interview with you. There's a lot of elements that make a part in that as well. E.g., you've got to have an amazing phone screen, you've got to have amazing benefits, website, social media, that all plays a part as well. But companies need to not sell themselves short when it comes to basic processes. I see comments and posts all the time on LinkedIn about a care recruitment crisis. There's not a care recruitment crisis. There's a crisis when it comes to processes. If you fix your process, there's so many people out there looking for a role. We've literally never seen any one of our clients fail to hire at least 50% more staff if they follow our processes. And that is not a number you can ignore. So do you know what I'm saying? If you fix your process, you will win. I talk about it on LinkedIn all the time. It's just a matter of fixing the process and also being consistent and actually enjoying recruitment. So there's a lot of care companies out there, typically registered managers, unfortunately, who don't always love recruitment, and that's not their fault. They either just don't like it, or it's just not their bag, or they probably might not think they're very good at it. That's not their problem. That's not their fault. So I think care companies have got to be smart in actually giving the role of recruitment to somebody who enjoys it and is good at it.
I agree.
completely agree.
I'll
No,
hand
go on,
over
Jack.
to- Oh, so I was just going to say, unfortunately, I think with social care, your typical registered manager is someone who started in the industry with good intentions and wanted to care. And through progression, they've worked their way up. But as they've worked their way up, they start losing that ability to care for their individuals because they have to focus on things that they never had the intention of doing. It's if you look at recruitment, it's someone's role. It's your full-time business, but we expect a registered manager to do that while they're doing accounts and chasing invoices, while they're doing audit. So they're wearing 5 hats. And when people say there's a recruitment crisis, I do empathise because a lot of it gets thrown internally, but companies can reduce stress using organisations such as yourself. And I feel that sometimes managers are set up to fail when it comes to it because it's not their qualification, it's not their remit, and then they're told, but you've got to do it. And I can see why statistically it looks bad. Like you, I'm a numbers guy, but then when I try and break down the facts and the reality, you've got a lot of essentially inexperienced people trying to recruit for roles while they're also trying to manage their businesses and everything like that, so they don't always divert the attention and then they get penalised in the long run for not recruiting.
But you're completely right. Like, it's not, I talk about this all the time because registered managers, when we have meetings with care companies, the owner will be like, look, I think we should use Stephen and those guys. And the registered managers will, I can see it. I see it 100% of the time. They're very defensive and a bit standoffish. And that's fine. It's because they're almost intimidated by recruitment a little bit. And they have a set way of doing it. I'll give you an example. We're working with a supported living company in the Midlands. They need to hire 40 staff per month on rota, so plus 40. So if they lose 5, plus they need to hire 45, and they're spending roughly £550,000 a quarter on agency, heavy numbers. And I said, look, okay, do you use agency as an emergency? Do you have continuity of care with an agency? I'm not against agency for those reasons. If it's an emergency, that's fine. It's like, oh, no, we rely on agency because I'll tell the registered manager we need to hire 40 people a month. They'll see that as too much of a task. Therefore, they'll just go, forget that agency because it's easier for them to do. They're given 1,000,001 other tasks. Recruitment is the priority for the business, but it's not the priority for the registered manager. And that is not the registered manager's fault if they've not been told the implications of agency. You get rid of agency, 9 times out of 10, you can pay your staff more. You've got better continuity of care. You can upgrade your care home, whatever it may be. But it's easy for an RM to go, if I call the agency, they'll just get me someone now. Whereas if Stephen's telling me I've got to do this, we've got to call people, then book them in for interview, then do the interview, then do the paperwork. That's going to take me shitloads of time. I don't want to do that. And that's an internal bottleneck. Do you know what I mean? Like that is something the company has got to fix. It's either a mentality shift or the registered manager needs more resource. I would highly encourage all care companies, if they can afford it, to hire a full-time internal recruiter or outsource it to someone like us if you don't want to do that. But an internal recruiter, a skilled one, which we work with and we train up, will do a very, very good job for you because that's their role. Somebody who's sales driven and can't wait to have a conversation with somebody. Oh my God, 10 people have just applied. Give me the phone. A registered manager is never going to say, "Give me the phone," because they're doing too much other stuff.
You've got to have an entrepreneur and hungry mindset for recruitment. Because you've got to look at it, as
Yeah,
you say, like sales. You've got to be hungry to get that win over the line, because if you don't, someone else will. And at the moment, it's an employees market.
yeah,
And a lot of the providers, years ago, there's been like this paradigm shift. I'm not sure if you've seen it, Mark, but years ago it used to be staff are replaceable. They like, if about 10 years ago, oh, if someone messes up for the minor misdemeanor, it's like gone, get someone else in. But now it's, hold on, we can't treat staff like that anymore. And in a way, it's great, for the staff members. But a company I used to work for, I'm not going to name them, they had a lot of agency staff coming in. So there was 8 of us working in a small supported living service, should we say, and at least 3 of the staff members were agency each time. Now, the company at the time was paying, I think, about 20 something odd pound an hour for the agency. But realistically, if they paid the staff more, staff would have picked it up as overtime. And this
yeah,
is what we were saying to them. And they were saying, the manager was like, that makes sense, but I don't make the decisions. And that comes from head office. It gets authorised from there. And sometimes common sense doesn't prevail because it comes out of another budget and it doesn't financially penalise that service in any way. They
yeah,
don't see it. Like, as you were saying, the managers will just go, it's easier just to spend the money on agency because it's not physically coming out of their bank balance. They're not seeing that pain that
yeah,
it's causing.
yeah,
Where but like sometimes I think if you was to say to your staff members, we'll give you double bubble, to cover it, you're
yeah,
probably
yeah.
still saving money on the agency, and you've got the continuity of care as well. So you've got a win all
Yeah.
round.
I think you've got the companies who are using excessive agency, and again, agency does have a place in social care, absolutely. The ones who are using excessively and being lazy and relying on agency need to take a big step back and say, okay, one, is this giving benefit to the people we're giving care for? Yes or no? Two, how is it affecting our internal permanent staff? So you talk to your average, I can say this because I've done it, I've been a carer for 3 or 4 different companies. When agency staff came in, the morale dropped significantly. The main reason was they were getting paid £2.50 more than everyone else, which didn't sit well with us. And 9 times out of 10, the agency staff member was not trained or had good communication skills. And that was the reality. So it's almost like an unjust. It's like, hold on, I'm a better carer and I work here all the time, but you're getting paid more than me. Like, and half of the permanent staff were then like, well, I'll just go work for the agency because I can pick and choose my own shifts and I get paid more. It's almost like a no-brainer, really. My wife was a midwife and she worked permanent for the NHS, and her friends left and became agency midwives and they were getting 3 times more than her. And I was sort of like looking at her going, do you want a slice of that? Or do you know what I mean? Like it's very tempting for people to work for agencies and I don't blame them.
I can give you an actual example. I mean, when I took over in the role that I'm in now, the staff were being paid the same Monday to Friday and the same at the weekend, but they were working in other providers because the pay was £2 more, or they were getting £2 more per hour. So they would do their normal hours with us and then any overtime elsewhere. But I think for me, it was about,
Yeah,
well, that doesn't make sense. If they want to do overtime, we're losing those. We need them to be covering the shifts, the weekends, whatever it is, the evening shifts, and actually putting that business case together, saying, actually, we're paying staff anyway, so why don't we
hmm,
just pay them a couple of extra? And we're thinking about pay increases and bits and pieces, and it's just about
yeah,
reviewing what you're currently doing. I mean, I was listening to the conversation. I think it's all good and great stuff. Part of me thinks that actually, even before managers get to thinking about automation, I think they need to think about personalization. And I remember when I used to manage learning disability services, they always used to struggle, especially if it was with challenging behaviour,
hmm,
to recruit somebody. And as opposed to having blanket adverts that used to just kind of give you your generic job description of a care worker, which never really explained what the role was. And I used to think,
yeah,
well, it definitely doesn't do the role that I would have applied for, was actually looking at the individual that needed the support or the couple of individuals, whoever they were, and then bespoking an advert to that. And
yeah,
then if they had a routine that they went to college every Monday or they went to the cinema every or whatever it was, putting that in the advert so somebody knew actually this is what my week could look like.
yeah. I'm
And I
glad
think
you've
that
said
really
that, Mark.
helped. Yeah,
I'm so
that
glad you've
really
said that.
helped in terms of learning disability services. But that's something that doesn't really need too much time to think about. You just need to
Yeah.
know the individual's preferences to then put that into an advert.
Yeah, exactly. We rewrite companies' job adverts. We have what we call an ideal staff form. It takes 5 minutes, and one of the questions is, can you please write 10 USPs of why a candidate should work for your company? And I feel sorry for the managers who fill it in. They get to 6 USPs typically, and then they get lost. And I'm like, you've almost lost your way a little bit there for me because you can't tell me 10 reasons to work for you, which is not good. And then I'll dig deeper. I'll be like, you remember when I met you 2 weeks ago? You told me that staff get to go to Alton Towers, they go swimming. You have these parties, you have these discos for staff. Why aren't they in this? Well, every care company has them. Like that's just a given. I'm like, no, no, it is not a given. You need to remember your company is unbelievable, and you need to sell this to people on the phone and when you meet them. And I think sometimes you've got to remind your staff internally how great it is to work for you and almost have meetings. I don't care if it's once a month or once a day, get in a huddle for 5 minutes with a brew, right? Tell me why someone should work here. No, it don't have to be cringe, it don't have to be awkward, not role play. Tell me why someone should work here. Because I tell you what, I heard you on the phone the other day and it was robotic as hell. And I'm not surprised our no-show rate is disgustingly bad because you're not selling it to people. Like you say, rewrite the job advert, make it bespoke to that person. Like that is a very simple task to do. But if you look at most job adverts, they are terrible, to put it bluntly.
The biggest thing that really annoys. Well, go on, sorry.
Same generic stuff, yeah.
I was just going to say the thing that really annoys me on job adverts these days is when they're like, "These are the company benefits," and it's like pension. I'm like, uniform. I'm like, they're not benefits for working for a company. They're things that like are just
PPE,
the norm. Yeah. Like they're like what you legally have to provide and do. But company pension isn't a benefit.
Exactly. Benefits. We will be nice to you. We will smile at interview. It's like that is given. Like you should be doing that anyway. Play the game. Like come. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. But yeah, it's just maybe it's companies losing their way a little bit or not moving with the times. I almost feel sorry for companies when they're not selling themselves. They're selling themselves short ultimately.
See, I mean,
go on.
Sorry. I was going to say, it all comes back to that entrepreneur side of things. Though you've got people that aren't experienced at selling their business. You got to think of it like you're raising an investment, but the investment's a staff member who's going to join your team and bring benefit, So you shouldn't be looking at it like, oh, this is just a task. I just need a bum on a seat to get me through so I'll meet a couple of boxes. It should be, this is my company. We're proud of this. This is why we're different, I mean, how you would sell it to your customers to build up the people you support. That's exactly the principle you need to apply when it's coming to recruitment, taking them strategies. I mean, I find when recruitment ads go right, now, out of this sector, I'm gonna give a good example. I think the MOD has really good ways of showing you what things are. Like if you can fix a bike, you can fix a tank. You can do that, and it shows that you've got ways to progress. But it also shows the camaraderie and the team side. And you got to think they're quite good adverts at getting people to join a team, like the big green machine, if you will. But ultimately, they're managing to recruit people that are going to eventually go to war at some point, right? So, but they're doing it in a way they're not like, oh, you're going to go to war. They're like, but these are the positives you've got because it's not all doom and gloom. You've got that, but you've got the team leaders, you've got the career progression, you've got the fun, you've got the social side of what comes with the serious work. And that's the point I'm trying to say. Like, a 30-second video of this is why the business is great, not just welcome to care company, but having some enthusiasm about it, getting some of the team. This is why I love working here. That sort of dynamic,
Absolutely, because we have to remember. You said it earlier. With this now, in 2025, the care staff, care candidates know they have the pick of any job. We're not naive enough to think this, and sometimes people say it's a bit taboo. And Stephen, no, that's an ignorant thing to say. It isn't at all. Us three now could go out, have an interview today and get offered a role today if we wanted to. That's the reality of it. Yes, we're from care backgrounds, but care staff hold the cards now. They're interviewing us at face-to-face interview. Okay, who's going to give me the best hours, the best pay? Who's going to let me work 1 in 3 weekends rather than alternate weekends? I'm not saying this is a good thing because continuity of care is our priority, but as a company, you can't say, well, people didn't show up for us for interview. if you're spending 7 days to give them a call, they've already joined somebody else who was better than you because you couldn't be bothered picking up the phone and contacting that person, and you haven't sold your company well enough. That is a harsh reality for most companies to hear, but that is the reality. And the quicker people hear these realities, the better the industry will be. I've been called out on it many, many times. I was a bit blunt, like I don't like the fact that he's so stern, and it's like, well, why not? Like, who's got time to waste? Like, you want a successful care company, you need to know what's going on in your care company. And the quicker people realize that, the better. Does that make sense? Like, again, I hope it doesn't come across arrogant. It's just I'd rather tell somebody who owns a care company, look, these are the mistakes you're making, and this is what you need to do to fix them. Stephen, we haven't got time to do that. Okay, well, what are we doing then? Like, what are you doing as a company? Like, that's your problem. Like, you've got to fix that.
I agree. I mean, I'm all for firm and direct. I mean, I got told I was direct not too long ago because some people don't like the obvious being pointed out to them, you know. But sometimes you need to strip it back and be blunt and real and be like, look, there's an error in your process, and this is how you need to resolve it, you know.
Yeah.
And as an outsider, you know, sometimes you can only be nice and nudge in the direction before you have to have them conversations. And you're absolutely correct in what you're saying, Stephen. You know, when we look at it, some people have to give their head a wobble. It's a recruitment issue, it's a sector issue. No, a lot of it is a company issue. There's people out there that want roles. There are people out there that need work. But if they don't know you exist, or you just blend in with the background, then there's no indifference, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look at the typical. When people speak to us straight away, I'll go, look, what are your top 3 bottlenecks? Number 1, every time, is no-shows. Every time. Number 2 is job boards are terrible and we don't get good applications. We do audits on job boards, especially Indeed, and people start blaming external influences, e.g. job boards and no-shows, which is easy to blame because nobody's reviewing this and nobody's auditing this. Right, do you know what I mean? So because there's no data, so I'll say, okay, tell me why your no-shows about. Oh, because people who apply on Indeed don't really care; they're just job hoppers. I'm like, there is no evidence of that at all. So we'll do Indeed audits. We'll come in and do an actual audit and go, okay, well, you haven't contacted these 400 people, and you've just sent messages to the rest. Do you honestly think sending a message to a candidate saying, "Hi, when can you come in for an interview?" is good enough for this care company? Like, and people get a bit taken back and going, well, that's how it's done. No, it isn't. That's not how care recruitment is done. It's not how it's done well. Well, if people don't, I heard this last week, if people don't reply to us from that message, that tells us everything we need to know about that person because they're ignorant and rude. I'm like, are you mental? Like, why do you think somebody should reply to you? Like, hi, when can you come in for an interview? And then the care company next day called them and got them in for an interview that day. So why should they reply to you when a company could be bothered picking up the phone? And it's just trying to change this shift in mentality.
It's like a Principal Seymour, isn't it, out of Simpsons? No, it's not me. It's the kids. They're the problem. You know,
something like that. Of course. It's everybody else's problem.
But this is the thing. You're absolutely correct. It comes down to the human attitude and nature, and it's easy to blame others and processes and stuff for failings, isn't it? You know, but you've got to sometimes reflect internally and look at the way you operate. And realistically, if I got a message just when can you come in, that shows there's no fault. But then equally, I've seen people be I want to come in for an interview. Well, you've got to be in at this time. Well, I can't do that time. Well, sorry, that's the time I've got available because my workload. And there's no give and take. So if I'm an employee on the, like a prospective employee on the opposite side of that, and I see there's no flexibility there or understanding straight away, that's a red flag for me because I think, well, you're putting your needs over me, you know, straight away.
Exactly that. We're looking after a supported living company in near Liverpool. They need roughly 12 staff a month. And we're actually arranging face-to-face interviews. We don't always do that, but if people are struggling, we will do that. So they gave us 6 hours a week to do. Bear in mind, they need 12 people a month. They gave us 6 hours a week. We filled 6 hours a week for 4 weeks in a row, and they weren't offering roles to anybody. So okay, there's clearly something wrong here. I told my team this. Look, I told the owner as well. 6 hours a week is just not good enough. We need 20 hours a week. He went, who's giving you 6 hours a week? I went, your registered managers. He went, you've got to be joking. I went, no, He said, right, you've got Monday to Thursday, 10 till 5. Will that do? I went, yes, it will. He says, look, they can do everything on Fridays because this is a priority now. We're spending too much on agency and they need to understand how the register managers hated that because it meant for 4 weeks now they've got to do interviews, 10 while 5 for 4 days a week. But he's saying, look, as a company, we need to prioritize this. Yes, the clients and the people we care for are the priority, of course they are. However, if Stephen and his team arrange an interview, you are making that interview. And if you can't make it, you need to rearrange it with somebody else. So it's giving people more accountability, which I think is a great thing. It's not a threat, it's not bullying, it's accountability. And I think giving people accountability, personally, when I was a HR manager, I liked it because you can get the best out of people as well. You can actually make it a nice experience, not a threat. It's making yourself accountable, and the results will definitely follow.
I knew as soon as you said that the registered manager was going to absolutely hate it. I was thinking, God, you sound like my recruitment team in-house.
But they hated us for 4 weeks. They love us now because they filled all the roles. So it's getting past that first barrier. And I sometimes say, look, it's just a quick one. You're going to hate me in about 20 minutes. I'll just tell, why? Because I'm going to put you out of your comfort zone and you're going to have not going to have as much time to do your daily tasks. I'm not saying that's right, but I'm telling you that's what's going to happen for at least a month. And unless you want to hire a full-time internal recruiter, which they never do. But eventually the registered managers get on side because they're like, well, this is better, yeah. People are happier, there's better continuity of care, I've got more staff, the rota is easier to conduct. The benefits eventually do happen.
I think it's because the registered manager just gets comfortable, and I've been there. You every week becomes not the same, but the same in terms of what you need to do. And then if something else comes along, it doesn't fit in that kind of diary of what you want. I mean, I think for me, some of the biggest things that I ever used to do, and I know I mentioned that I've got an in-house recruitment team now. I work for a lot larger organisation, but prior to this company, I've never worked for companies. It was always me as the manager doing it. Was actually utilising either Google calendars, Microsoft calendars, so that people could book their own interview times in. Just because I found actually, by the time you had spoken to somebody, if you were then doing a telephone interview, if that's what your company had, which I personally don't see the point of doing either, unless I actually can't think of a reason why you need to telephone interview somebody, but you might be able to tell us otherwise, Stephen. But yeah, I just used to think they used to cut down some of that, time between somebody applying, going back and forth, and then arranging a date. And especially if it was done via email, if you were out of the office and it was still your responsibility, actually that was a lot easier. I mean, the company I work for now, we use a system called ePloy, so it does that automation already for us. So as soon as we say that somebody appears suitable, it will send them an email with the calendar link. They book it into one of the managers' diaries. And we've got a number of different managers that will do those interviews. But it's just about thinking outside. And I think sometimes in social care, we become sheep. I think we just follow the same processes everyone else and what everybody else is doing. And then I think we struggle to think of, actually, how do we do that differently? I don't do it in my current company. One thing that we used to do, definitely in the learning disability world, was actually do a video to the applicant that was applying. Not with the person that they would be supporting, but just with a couple of the team. It'd be me, and it would just do a generic video like looking forward to meeting you. One of the services was a nightmare to find. Actually, if you turn down this road, look for the big white house on the opposite side, blah, blah, blah. And actually that personalized video, I think people used to respond to it just because it was something different and not what and if they're going for 5-6 different interviews, actually you need to stand out.
I think that's a really smart idea because you've bespoken it and you're making it more interactive with the candidate. The candidate is going to appreciate what you're doing for them as well. But I love what you said there about giving people options for interviews. We do that as well because as soon as we don't encourage companies to do phone interviews. We say do phone screens, 5-6 minutes, make people feel really good, talk about them as a person, talk about values, then say, look, this conversation is going really well. We had 20 available interviews. There's now 7 because we're very popular. I'm going to email you and text you the interview availability. There's going to be a link to meet us face to face. As soon as you give people an option, it's almost like a scarcity tactic, where you're sort of saying, look, we are limited, but we really want to meet you. But then I'll make it very clear, if you can't make one of these, let us know what you can do, and we will make something happen. So you're then showing the candidate, my God, they're making a real effort with me. That tells me about that company. That tells me everything I need to know about them. So you just basically make it a really warm experience as well.
I think it's great. I mean, personalization shows interest, doesn't it? It makes it more human, and you've got to have that like the human side of a recruitment process. I don't want to feel well. I haven't worked for someone in many years, but when I have applied for jobs, obviously, I don't want to feel like I'm just a number. I want to feel like
Yeah,
I'm part of something, you know. And when I just see everything so generic, you know, as you say, Mark, if I'd got a video like that years ago, I know tech's evolved and we can do that more now. But if you'd had something like that, or even like a personalized joining instruction that's clearly not a template but a bit of a template, you know, nice to see on your CV that you've got an interest in, you know, the person interviewing you's got an interest in rugby as well, like maybe suggest an icebreaker, take
yeah,
away that awkward point, because there's nothing worse than sitting in an interview and you're both sitting there like,
yeah, yeah.
you know, it's that first you just have
Proper
that
awkward.
awkward look and it's like hello, you know, then it's like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
because as an interviewer, I feel awkward at times as well. If I don't have information about the person, you know, what can I discuss? Because we know you've come for a role, you know, but we've got to do that song and dance around that as well. And a lot of that
Yeah,
interaction is what makes or breaks it, because the role might not be 100% matched to the person, but they can learn or they can adapt, you know, or you might change the role over time, the same as the salary might not be 100% where they wanted it to be, but it can potentially go there. There's negotiable points, but what
mhm,
is not negotiable is the first impression, and the
yeah,
first impression is what counts, you know.
yeah,
And
yeah. It's what we, yeah. So I hate when a company will, um, that CV is terrible, no care experience, clearly haven't made an effort. What we do to counter that is we ask screener questions on Indeed, two major ones, which are, and hear me out. The first one is, are you a kind and compassionate person? Now, you would think people would be absolutely stupid and crazy to put no. So you do get a few no's, which is really interesting, but I'd probably say about 80% of people won't just put yes, they'll actually tell you why. So, for example, the CV might be awful, but it might be old, they might not like tech, they might not have uploaded a new CV. But then you'll get people literally writing out, yes, I believe I am a kind and compassionate person for these reasons. So then not only have they gone out of their way to write a really nice answer, you have something to go by when you do a quick phone screen. Can I just say, Mark, I've seen your kind of compassionate answer on Indeed. Tell me this about your grandma and looking after her. That sounds really interesting. Do you mind sharing that story with me? Oh, you've read my application. Fantastic. They've now got an anecdote and you're building a rapport with that person. And the second question we'll ask, we asked five to six questions is, tell us something interesting about yourself. And people will start opening up. So what you're doing is carers never see this usually. They'll be like, it's getting them thinking. Sorry, what's the name of this company again? God, they've asked me this question. Oh, what is? Let me tell them something interesting. Okay, I did a bungee jump last year in Australia, or whatever it may be. Straight away, it's got them thinking. I wonder why they asked that question, and it's also giving you ammunition when you call this person. Ring, ring, Mark. Tell me everything I need to know about this bungee jump. Should I do it? Yes or no? And they'll be like, oh, right, yeah, you've read my application. It's a bit more informal. It's creating a bond in a relationship, and you can get a conversation going because they're going to buy into you as a recruiter or as a registered manager. So it's just completely building rapport. If you call a candidate straight away, I just need to check, can you definitely work alternate weekends? You've got a car, aren't you? It's bullshit. Like it's the same old, like doesn't work.
I have this.
You've got to make yourself stand out.
I have this sort of process. Although I have an idea of where questions are gonna go, a lot of it's, could I have a beer with this person, basically, you know, like could I genuinely sit down and have a chat with this person, a human chat, and get from A to B with them in a nice way, you know. I'm not saying I've got to be their friend, you know, but is this,
Yeah.
I think when I'm having that chat with someone, so historically when I've interviewed, I'll know the questions I need to ask, but I'll drop them into conversation, you know. So I won't be like, so tell me about your last role, you know. I'll be like, oh, so like, yeah, I see you've worked in it, you know, so tell me a bit about, you know, in that way, instead of having it in a direct way, more of a
Mhm.
conversational based. So the way you phrase the question, so it's not like, oh, well, let me tell you all about the company we do it this way, we do it that way. So it's like, oh, what have you heard about us? Oh, yeah, because we actually do some pretty cool stuff, you know. So we'll tell you a bit about and make it more in that way where it's intriguing, but allowing the person opportunity to ask questions as well. Because a lot of the time when they're on the end of the table, they feel scared to ask questions, and then you'll get an email after. Sorry, I forgot to ask. Well, it was probably on their mind. And the one thing I can't stand is ghost salaries. Ghost salaries.
Well,
So basically, like
it should
competitive
be
pay.
illegal. Yeah. Means nothing.
I won't apply for a job if it doesn't give you the pay. I just think it's a waste of everybody's time. I mean, I think just listening to you there, Jack, brought back a memory of when I worked over in Hertfordshire for the council. And they used to send the interview questions to candidates because we weren't interviewing people. I mean, it'd be different for yourself. You need somebody that's skilled and knows how to do a job. But when you're employing a care worker, actually, like we've said, all you want is somebody that's kind, that's caring, is going to turn up for work, is going to do the job that you're paying them for. So they used to send them the interview questions, and then in the actual interview, it'd be more of a conversation around actually, does this person fit with the values of our company? What are they going to tell us? But actually, because they knew what was coming, there wasn't that kind of pent up, that anxiety. It was just a relaxed conversation, more about them and what their interests were, more than anything else. And I think you used to get more from that when I kind of reflect back than half the interviews you do nowadays, where people are coming in and they are worried and they are nervous about, you know, the unknown of what's about to happen. And I think sometimes, thinking back to some companies and the questions that we've asked over the years, sometimes as an interviewer, some of those questions are so bloody boring that, you know, I've thought to myself in the past, God, this candidate probably isn't interested because I'm not interested in asking this bloody question, let alone them telling me the answer. But so they've got to be interesting to the interviewer as much as they are to the interviewee.
Yeah, Mark, I'm so glad you've raised this because we encourage companies to tell candidates what will happen at the interview. Now, people have countered this before and said, well, no, they need to think on their own feet and Google who we are and what we do and what kind of care we do. I agree with that. But if it's values-based recruitment as somebody who's never done care before, which we need to push as much as possible in the UK, and then you've got questions asking about safeguarding or a complicated question that somebody might not have heard of the term before, you are setting that person up for failure straight away. Well, yeah, they failed this interview. They didn't know what safeguarding was. We can't put our clients through that. Hold on a minute. Like, you cannot judge someone just because they didn't know what a term was. If you would have said, so safeguarding is A, B, C, and D, these are the effects. How do you feel that might affect the role and what could you do about it? That's different. When you're asking blunt questions and then criticizing people for not knowing, that's painful. Whereas if you email that person saying, hi, just so you know, you're going to be here for an hour. The first 10 minutes is a conversation. We'll have a cup of tea. Next 5 minutes, you'll meet a registered manager. They're amazing. I bet you can't, like, they can't wait to meet you. Then we're going to have half an hour competency questions around A, B, C, and D. If you're not aware of these, they're on our website link here. I've also attached details of what confidentiality means. You're not telling them the answers. You're making them think outside the box and getting them, excited about the role. Does that make sense? I don't know if that. If you've heard of people doing that before, I think we've got to encourage people to not be intimidated by an interview. Make it an enjoyable experience.
Everyone has a baseline. Everyone's got to learn from somewhere. And when you're bringing someone in for, say, like an entry-level role, you can't expect them to know the answers. That's what the learning induction's for, you know. And it's one of them sort of, you're absolutely correct. You're setting up to fail. I'm open and honest, right? So believe it or not, I never actually finished school. I was a naughty boy. I got kicked out of school. So I went into the army at 16 and I went to an army college. And boy, oh boy, did it teach me that I was a small fish in a big pond. Right, and it actually made me want to get education. Only problem I had is I excelled at education. As I qualified as a combat medic. I had qualifications in the battlefield advanced trauma life support. So I've clearly got aptitude for education. But when I left the military, the first job I applied for, I felt like an idiot. And that was because they was asking for my minimum qualifications and stuff like that. And a lot of my military qualifications didn't actually transfer into civilian life. So I was a bit like, well, how do I answer this? And I didn't answer it. And I left it for a few days and I got a call from them. And I was just frank with them. I said, look, I didn't finish school, but I've got a lot of army qualifications. Here's where I'm at. And they was like, great, let's speak to you. And it overcome that obstacle. But that was a barrier for me just because it was asking that on that that, so I was like, oh, how do I play this? Now I've got more qualifications than I could ever, I've
Yeah.
studied law. I've just got an aptitude for it. But that could have potentially been a career blocker to stop me coming into social care. But it was
Yeah.
that one person reaching out and going, come on in and have a chat, you know, actually drove me in. Whereas
Yeah.
I think it's like, time and place sort of sort of thing.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I feel that sometimes we do put blockers there, especially where we're saying to someone, you must have this or you need to have that. I mean, you do have hard fouls and like, obviously if someone's subject to barring, you can't turn around and go, let's have a chat around it. There's obviously a reason why they're barred.
Yeah.
But looking at that process and have it as a more human, if you want to reply, give us a chat and we'll talk to you about the role. So instead of having a fixed job role description, we're more than happy to give you a 30-second call and just say, look, this is exactly what it is and what the requirements are. Sometimes people are intellectually challenged and they see that as a barrier to employment and they hold themselves back.
No, absolutely. I think it's, even listening to you two there, like even in my own current company, we're mobilizing, and even I had to say to some of the managers, we were asking questions around experience, and then they weren't offering people jobs. And I was like, they've worked in care for like 25 years. Like, I could have worked in care for 50 years, but never done a catheter. But if you ask me a question about a catheter, I wouldn't be able to answer it.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean you're not a good carer in person. I mean, listening to you there, Stephen, talking about the company, God, if anybody's got the question about, tell us about the company, what do you know about us and our vision and about, like, I bet half your bloody staff don't know what the vision and values of your company are. Let alone the new candidate. But
someone the other day said to me, well, they didn't know our company ethos. I was like, I don't know where to start with that question. Well, they should have known our ethos. It's on our homepage and our website, right? Did you tell them, like, is that a deal breaker then? Yeah, it's just a mentality shift. We've got to get back. I did a podcast with Skills for Care. We spoke about motivating registered managers. My biggest piece of advice to registered managers, if they wanted to listen, would be, look, take yourself back to when you became a carer. Your first ever job in care. How was it for you? And you ask any registered manager that, they'll typically say, oh God, yeah, I remember it was daunting. I remember the interview, yeah. God, yeah. And I'm like, right, perfect. Use that as fuel when you're interviewing people, and do what wasn't done with you, do the opposite and make people feel warm, welcome, be extra nice to them, because we need to get the next generation of people in. Care vacancies are increasing. What are we going to do about it? We need to work together to fix it.
Also changing your company's way of working and growing with society in the times as well. So you look at let's just say a school leaver nowadays, you turn 18 years old, you would have been brought up around tech your whole life. To go and join, I said this yesterday actually, didn't I, Mark, when we was at UK Care Week, essentially to hire someone and go into like a paper-based setting and say, well, now you've got to use stone and chisel to do your work. They're like, this isn't for me, they need to modernise their ways of working. And sometimes you get that limbo of, well, I've got 3 years to retirement as a registered manager, so I don't want to see a big change close to the end of my, and you get a lot of these factors that come in. But we're going to have to round it up, guys. We've come to the end of time. It's been
it's been really nice chatting with you both. Really good, yeah. Like I think conversations like this are great. We need to do more of them, don't we? Just to get people thinking and hopefully inspiring people as well. I think that's the key.
We'll have to definitely bring you back, Stephen. It's been a pleasure. I mean, do you want to just give a shout out to your company one more time? Tell people where to find you and follow you.
Yeah, of course. The Care Social Network. Got a website with a lot of case studies and testimonials. caresocialnetwork.co.uk. LinkedIn's probably the best way to get me. Quite active on there. If you've got any questions about care recruitment retention processes, you just want a quick chat, some free advice, just get in touch. There's a lot of quick wins. Somebody said to me the other day, mate, I've been following Domcare, been following you for 3 years. We're now at 1,000. We started 3 years ago. We're at 990 hours. I basically just followed your advice on LinkedIn. I hope you don't mind. I've not paid you a penny. I almost feel like giving you a couple of grand. I was like, I love everything about that. I was like, you give that couple of grand to your staff, mate. Have a nice Christmas party and invite me to the party. Let's do that. But that's nice. Do you know what I mean? Knowing that there's organic stuff happening where if you just listen and take on board, you can do it yourself as well.
Excellent thought leadership. No, thank you. I mean, it's great to hear something like that. I mean, Mark, have you got any closing statements? Or
No, thank you very much, Stephen, for joining us today. I think there's been so many bits and pieces that are food for thought here. And I'd just say to any registered direct, whoever, actually just go check the regulation, because it doesn't tell you what needs to be in an interview. It just says that you need to hire fit and proper people. It doesn't specify what that process looks like. So stop being a sheep and go and break the mold is what I would advise.
Yeah.
and my final bits: get away from bloody templated documents. Create your own. Make them personal to your organisation. It might be easier to buy an off-the-shelf package that has the what you perceive to be the requirements, but a general, recruitment package could potentially missell your business in the future.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well said.
Oh, thank you. Well, thank you very much for listening, everyone. Make sure you give us a follow.
Thank you very much, both. See you later.
Cheers.